The morning sun rose lazily over Manhattan, painting the skyline with streaks of gold and rose. In the penthouse of the Montclair Tower, Daniel Royce stood in front of the floor-to-ceiling windows, staring down at the city that once worshipped him. His reflection in the glass was hollow, haunted, a ghost of the man who, just months ago, had been one of the most powerful billionaires on Wall Street. The news outlets still called him the fallen king. Once worth over $3 billion, Daniel had lost it all: his company, his reputation, and the respect of the financial elite. The SEC investigation had ruined him. His closest allies turned their backs. The headlines were merciless. Royce Investments collapses amid fraud scandal. Daniel Royce declares bankruptcy. Empire reduced to dust. He didn't even know how it had all unraveled so fast. A single misstep, a trusted partner who wasn't what he seemed, and a system too complex to control. It was like watching an avalanche in slow motion, unstoppable, merciless. His wife Claire had left him within weeks. Their divorce papers arrived in the same envelope as his final court summons. She took the townhouse in Tribeca, the cars, and custody of their teenage daughter Mia. Now Daniel was alone. He sold the penthouse's art pieces one by one just to keep paying rent. The marble counters and glass shelves, once filled with imported wine, were now dusty and bare. The staff had long been dismissed. Even the doorman looked away when Daniel walked by, as if ashamed to greet a man who'd lost his crown. One afternoon, Daniel sat by his grand piano, a Steinway he'd bought for Claire on their 10th anniversary, and pressed a few keys without purpose. The notes felt empty. His phone buzzed, the screen lighting up with an unknown number. "Mr. Royce," a voice said, "this is Alan from Royce Investments Liquidation. We've finalized the auction. The final properties are sold." Daniel swallowed. "Everything." "Everything, sir. The private jet, the vacation home in Aspen, the yacht. After debts and legal fees, you're left with a personal balance of $2,417. He didn't answer, just stared at the piano keys, his fingers frozen in place. $2,417. That was the price of his empire. When the call ended, Daniel stood and walked to the balcony. The wind was sharp against his face. Below, the city pulsed, alive, indifferent. He had once felt like he owned it. Now he was just another man standing on the edge, wondering what went wrong. He considered ending it. The thought came quietly, like a whisper. He imagined leaning forward, falling into the cold morning air, letting it all go. But something stopped him, a faint, almost forgotten image of his daughter's face. Mia, with her messy brown hair and soft smile. The last time he saw her, she had looked at him like he was a stranger. "Why didn't you just tell the truth, Dad?" she had said before leaving his apartment. He had no answer. So instead of jumping, Daniel packed a single suitcase, left the penthouse, and vanished into the city. He checked into a rundown motel on the outskirts of Brooklyn, the kind of place where nobody recognized faces or asked questions. The wallpaper peeled off in strips, and the air smelled faintly of mold and cigarettes. But it was quiet. For days he walked aimlessly, sleeping little and eating less. The once impeccably dressed billionaire now wore a faded hoodie and old jeans, the kind of outfit he wouldn't have let his interns wear to work. His beard grew wild, his eyes tired. One evening, while walking past a small maintenance office behind an old commercial building, he noticed a sign taped to the glass. "Janitor needed full-time 18/HR. Inquire within." Daniel stopped. For a long minute he stared at the sign as if it were in another language. Him, a janitor. The absurdity almost made him laugh. But something in him, maybe the exhaustion, maybe the need to feel useful, pushed him inside. Behind a cluttered desk sat a broad-shouldered man in his early 40s, wearing a blue uniform and a kind expression. His name tag read Marcus. "Hey, you here for the job?" Marcus asked. Daniel hesitated. "I saw the sign." "Ever done janitorial work before?" Daniel's mouth went dry. No, but I learned fast. Marcus looked him up and down, his eyes pausing on the calloused hands and the dark circles under his eyes. He didn't ask for a resume. Something in Daniel's tone, maybe the quiet desperation, made him decide not to. All right, Marcus said. We can try you for a week. Mornings start at 6. Floors, trash, windows, bathrooms. You okay with that? Daniel nodded. Yes. Marcus grinned. Good. Welcome aboard, mister. Daniel, he said softly. Just Daniel. Daniel's first day was humiliating. The mop handle blistered his hands, the smell of industrial cleaner made him cough, and the sight of office workers stepping around him, like he was invisible, carved into his pride. Yet, there was something strangely grounding about it. The work was simple, honest. Every stain he scrubbed away was like washing off a piece of his old life. Marcus turned out to be more than just a supervisor. He was patient, hardworking, and always humming under his breath. During lunch breaks, they'd sit on overturned paint buckets behind the building and share sandwiches. Daniel learned that Marcus was a single dad raising a 7-year-old boy named Caleb. He's my whole world, Marcus would say, showing pictures on his cracked phone. Smartest kid you'll ever meet, wants to be an astronaut. Daniel smiled weakly. You're doing a good job then. Marcus shrugged. Trying to. Life doesn't always go how you plan, but it's not about what you lose, it's about who you become after. Those words stuck with Daniel. One rainy night, Daniel stayed late cleaning the lobby. The building lights reflected on the wet floor like broken glass. As he wrung the mop, Marcus came in, holding 2 cups of coffee. You ever tell me what you did before this? Marcus asked casually. Daniel froze. Does it matter? Marcus shrugged. Not to me, but sometimes talking helps. Daniel looked down at the mop bucket. I used to run a company, big one, then I lost it. Marcus didn't react with surprise or judgment. He just nodded slowly. Guess the world can flip on anyone. Daniel exhaled. Yeah, I thought I had everything figured out, money, power, people bowing when I walked in. And then nothing. Marcus took a sip of coffee. You know what I tell Caleb when he falls off his bike? What? Doesn't matter how hard you fall. What matters is how long you stay down. Daniel met his eyes. For the first time in months, he felt something stir in his chest, hope. That night, lying on his thin motel mattress, Daniel couldn't sleep. He stared at the ceiling, hearing Marcus's voice in his head. Maybe his fall wasn't the end. Maybe it was a start, a brutal, unwanted beginning. He didn't know it yet, but Marcus and his son were about to change everything. Everything. Winter crept into the city with quiet cruelty. The mornings were dark, the wind sharp enough to cut through Daniel's worn jacket as he walked to work. He still couldn't believe how far he'd fallen, from chauffeured cars and private jets to waiting for a half-empty bus with janitorial gloves sticking out of his pocket. But every day, Marcus greeted him with the same warm grin. Morning, partner, he'd say, handing him a steaming coffee from the corner shop. Daniel tried to pay him once, but Marcus waved him off. You'll get the next one when you're rich again, he joked. Daniel laughed softly. Don't count on that. You never know, Marcus said, tapping his temple. Brains don't vanish, man. You just got to find where you buried them. Over time, Daniel began to notice things about Marcus that few would. He had a quiet wisdom not from books or business schools, but from survival. He managed his small salary with precision, never wasting a cent, always saving for Caleb's future. Every Friday, no matter how tired he was, Marcus would rush home with a grocery bag and a small toy or book for his son. Daniel had never seen such devotion. Sometimes after their shift, Marcus invited Daniel over for dinner. His apartment was small, a 2-bedroom unit in a crumbling building with flickering hallway lights, but it felt like home. The walls were filled with Caleb's drawings, rockets, stars, stick figures of him and his dad holding hands. Caleb adored Daniel instantly. Are you my dad's new friend? he asked the first time they met, eyes wide with curiosity. I guess I am, Daniel said with a small smile. Cool, you can help me with my science project. We're building a rocket out of soda bottles. Daniel crouched beside him, intrigued. You like space? I love space, Caleb said proudly. Dad says the stars don't care if you're rich or poor, they shine for everyone. Daniel looked up at Marcus, who was setting plates on the table, and felt a lump rise in his throat. That line, simple, true, hit deeper than any speech he'd ever heard. Dinner was modest but delicious, spaghetti, garlic bread, and laughter, real laughter, the kind Daniel hadn't known in years. When he left that night, the air outside felt lighter, the city less cruel. Weeks passed, Daniel began to change. He stopped hiding who he was. One afternoon during lunch, Marcus asked, "So what really happened, man? You ever gonna tell me the full story?" Daniel hesitated, then sighed. I ran a financial firm, Royce Investments. We managed billions. Then my partner, he did something illegal behind my back. I trusted him completely. When it all came out, he threw me under the bus. The investigation cleared me of fraud, but by then it didn't matter. The company was gone. My reputation gone. Marcus whistled low. Damn, that's heavy. Daniel nodded. I spent years thinking I was untouchable. I had everything: cars, houses, a wife, people who pretended to care. But when it all fell apart, I realized I didn't have a single real friend. Not one. Marcus leaned back. You do now. It wasn't just a line, he meant it, and Daniel felt it. The building they worked in was old and half forgotten, a mix of small offices, a few startups, and a nonprofit on the top floor. Daniel's sharp mind couldn't help but notice things: broken management systems, poor inventory tracking, inefficiency everywhere. One day, as he organized cleaning supplies, an idea struck him. He stayed after hours that night, scribbling on a notepad. He sketched out a better scheduling system for the janitorial shifts, a way to save time and cut costs. It was instinctive, his business brain waking from hibernation. The next morning, he showed it to Marcus. This is brilliant, Marcus said, eyebrows raised. Where the hell were you when they hired me? Daniel laughed, buried under bad decisions. They implemented the plan quietly. Within a month, the work was smoother, cleaner, faster. Even the building manager noticed. Impressive work, she said one day. Marcus, your new guy's good. Marcus grinned. Told you, he's not just a mop man. Life didn't suddenly become easy, but something inside Daniel began to heal. He stopped looking at himself as a failure. He started saving again, just small amounts. He even found himself mentoring Caleb after work, helping him with math and school projects. One evening, as snow fell softly outside, Caleb showed him a drawing. It was of 3 stick figures, Caleb in the middle, Marcus on one side and Daniel on the other. Above them, in big letters, it said, "My family." Daniel felt his throat tighten. You drew me. Of course, Caleb said proudly. You're part of the team. He had no words, just a quiet nod, and a tear he quickly wiped away. Then one day, everything changed again. A woman entered the building, tall, blonde, dressed in a dark coat. Daniel froze the moment he saw her. Claire, his ex-wife. She didn't recognize him at first. Why would she? The man before her wasn't the polished billionaire she'd married. He was wearing a janitor's uniform, holding a mop. But then their eyes met and she gasped. Daniel. He straightened slowly. Hello, Claire. She looked stunned. What are you doing here? Working, he said simply. Her lips parted in disbelief. As a janitor. Yes. She shook her head as if trying to understand. I came to talk to you weeks ago, but your old number was disconnected. Mia, she wanted to see you. Daniel's heart skipped. Mia. She's been worried. She's angry, but she misses you. She doesn't understand why you disappeared. He swallowed hard. I didn't know she wanted to see me. She's in town this weekend, Claire said softly. If you want, you could come by. He nodded slowly, his voice trembling. I'd like that. That weekend, Daniel took the train to Claire's apartment. Mia answered the door. She was taller now, sharper around the eyes, the way pain makes people grow up too soon. Hi, Dad, she said quietly. Hi, sweetheart. They sat in awkward silence at first. But then he began telling her everything, the truth, no embellishment, no self-pity. About losing the company, about Marcus, about working as a janitor. At first she didn't say much, but when he mentioned Caleb, her expression softened. So, you're helping a kid with science projects now. He smiled faintly. Yeah, he's a good kid. Reminds me of you when you were little, always asking questions. For the first time in years, she laughed. A real laugh. By the time he left, Mia hugged him tightly. I'm proud of you, Dad, she whispered. For once, I'm really proud. When Daniel returned to work the next day, Marcus noticed something different about him, a calmness, a quiet fire. Everything all right, brother? Marcus asked. Daniel smiled, better than all right. He rolled up his sleeves and got back to work. But that spark, that old brilliance had returned. He started thinking again, not just about survival, but about rebuilding. Late at night, when Marcus and Caleb were asleep, Daniel sat at their kitchen table, sketching plans for something new, a small startup that could change how cleaning services were managed across the city. Affordable, fair, tech-driven. He called it Clean Start. Marcus found him one night surrounded by papers. What are you up to, man? Daniel looked up, eyes shining. I think I just found a way for both of us to never mop another floor again. Clock ticked past midnight in Marcus's apartment. Papers covered the kitchen table, empty coffee mugs stood like tired soldiers, and Daniel sat hunched over a notebook filled with sketches, budgets, and plans. The glow from a single desk lamp fell across his face, a face no longer defeated, but alive again. Marcus rubbed his eyes from across the table. You're seriously doing this, huh? Daniel looked up, a faint grin tugging at his lips. We're doing this. Man, you're talking about starting a company. We clean bathrooms. How are we gonna run a business? Daniel chuckled softly. You clean bathrooms. I used to run multi-billion-dollar portfolios. Between your heart and my head, I think we'll manage. Marcus leaned back, letting that sink in. What do you call it again? Clean Start. Daniel's eyes lit up. Because everyone deserves one. Marcus smiled at that. Now that's a name I can believe in. The next few weeks were a blur of work and hope. Daniel spent every spare moment refining the business model, a digital platform that connected cleaning crews with clients directly, cutting out middlemen and giving workers fair pay. Marcus helped him gather local contacts, people who'd spent their lives doing janitorial jobs for scraps. They built it out of nothing, one borrowed laptop, a used printer, and Daniel's relentless drive. Marcus managed operations, Daniel handled the numbers. Caleb even pitched in, designing the company's first logo, a blue mop forming a sunrise. That's perfect, Daniel said when he saw it. You've got an artist's soul, kid. Caleb beamed. Nah, I just drew what Dad always says. After the dark comes the light. Money was tight, but Daniel was clever. He reached out to an old contact, a former intern named Sarah who had gone on to start her own small venture capital firm. At first, she didn't recognize his number. When she finally called back, her voice was hesitant. Daniel, I thought you disappeared. Not disappeared, he said with a small laugh. Just started over. I've got something new, something real this time. He pitched Clean Start to her over coffee in a downtown diner, wearing the same janitor's uniform he worked in. She listened, skeptical at first, but as Daniel spoke, the old fire returned to his voice, not the arrogance of a billionaire, but the conviction of a man reborn. When he finished, Sarah smiled. You know what's funny? You sound more like a leader now than you ever did when you had billions. A week later, she sent him an email. "You've got $50,000, don't waste it." Daniel printed the email and pinned it on Marcus's fridge. "That's our seed money." Marcus laughed in disbelief. 50 grand. Man, I've never seen that many zeros in one place. "Get used to it," Daniel said, eyes gleaming. "We're just getting started." Within months, Clean Start began to grow. They started small, 1 building, then 3, then 10. Daniel handled contracts, Marcus trained new workers personally. Their philosophy was simple: dignity in every job. Unlike big cleaning firms that exploited workers, Clean Start paid fair wages, provided benefits, and treated janitors as partners, not tools. The workers loved them, clients noticed the difference, word spread. Daniel and Marcus were unstoppable, not because of greed or ambition, but because of purpose. And through it all, Caleb was there, helping with flyers, learning about spreadsheets, dreaming bigger. Daniel found himself spending more time with the boy than he ever did with his own daughter when she was young. But fate wasn't done with him yet. One spring afternoon, as Daniel sat in the new Clean Start office, a small rented space overlooking a park, a familiar knock came at the door. It was Mia. "Dad," she said softly, stepping inside, "Mom told me what you've been doing." Daniel smiled, standing awkwardly. "Not bad for a janitor, huh?" She looked around the modest office, the framed logo Caleb drew, the stacks of cleaning supplies in the corner, the computer humming on the desk. "It's more than that," she said. "It's good. You're helping people." Daniel nodded, his voice quiet. "I guess I finally figured out what success really means." Mia hugged him then tightly. "I missed you." He whispered back, "I miss me too." Months rolled into a year. Clean Start expanded across the city. Local newspapers ran headlines like, "Former billionaire rebuilds fortune by cleaning toilets." A janitor and a CEO, the unlikely partnership changing the industry. But Daniel didn't chase cameras or fame. He stayed grounded, working beside his team, still wearing the same blue uniform. One evening, they gathered on the rooftop of their first building to celebrate their 1-year anniversary. The air was filled with laughter, music, and the smell of grilled food. Marcus stood beside Daniel, raising a paper cup of soda. "To second chances," Marcus said. Daniel smiled. "And to the people who believe in you when no one else does." They clinked cups. Caleb ran up, waving a certificate from school. "Dad, Daniel, I won first place in the science fair." Daniel lifted him up, grinning. "That's amazing, champ." Marcus's eyes shone with pride. "Told you he'd make it to the stars." Caleb looked at them both and said, "We all did." As the night deepened, Daniel stepped aside for a moment, looking out at the city lights. The skyline glittered like a river of stars. The same skyline he once ruled with arrogance, now gazed upon with gratitude. He thought of the man he used to be, hollow, proud, lost, and the man he had become, humbled, hopeful, whole. Marcus joined him, quiet for a while. "Funny, huh?" he said. "You had to lose everything to find something real." Daniel nodded slowly. "Yeah, I thought I had built an empire. Turns out I just built walls." Marcus chuckled. "Well, you tore him down good." Daniel turned to him. "No, Marcus, you did. You and that kid of yours. You gave me something money never could: purpose." Marcus patted his shoulder. "Nah, man. You just needed someone to remind you what it means to be human." Years later, Clean Start became one of the fastest-growing service startups in the country. Investors lined up. Awards followed. But Daniel never took full credit. Every interview, every speech, he always said the same thing. "The man who changed my life wasn't a billionaire or a genius. He was a single dad janitor who saw me when no one else did." He kept working side by side with Marcus, their friendship stronger than any contract. And on Clean Start's 5th anniversary, they opened a scholarship fund in Caleb's name. for children of low-income workers who dreamed of becoming more. During the ceremony, as applause filled the hall, Daniel looked at Marcus and whispered, "You know, I used to think wealth was about what you own." Marcus smiled, "And now?" Daniel looked at Caleb standing proudly on stage, Mia and the audience beaming at him, and the dozens of smiling workers whose lives had changed. "Now I know it's about who you lift when you rise." That night as he stepped outside, the city lights shimmered like memories reborn. Daniel tilted his head back, staring at the stars. For the first time in a long time, he didn't feel small beneath them. He felt part of them, shining, not because of power or money, but because he had finally found his light again. And somewhere in the distance, a janitor's hum echoed softly through the night, the same quiet tune that started it all. The end.